Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, podsters or podroonies if you prefer. I know it's been a long wait, but I am back, people, after a bit of illness. Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't do my last episode on, which I had planned on Gene Hackman films. We couldn't rearrange either, so with Movies and Us. But hopefully at some point we will be able to get those guys on at some point, maybe next year. But who knows? Watch this space. But this episode, as Caught Stealing is out in the cinemas, we'll be talking Darren Aronofsky films, who is obviously quite a maverick filmmaker, very much goes out there with how he directs films, very kind of experimental at times, and certainly the films that we have picked does showcase that. And of course, I can't talk alone. Oh no, I'm joined by Tommy from the Haven't Seen It podcast. How are you, sir?
Hi, thanks for having me back on.
Awesome. You might not already know Tommy's podcast because he's been on quite a few times if you're a regular listener. But if you are new to the podcast, I'll let Tommy explain what his podcast is all about for you.
Yeah, so I'm on Haven't Seen It. Me and my friend Timmy, we discuss a movie each week that one of us hasn't seen before. So we do everything from The Godfather to we did Barry Lyndon recently, even nice. A childhood favorite of mine, Small Soldiers, which our guest has never seen before. So nice. It's all a mix of movies, so it's really fun.
Hasn't Small Soldiers got a new 4K release recently as well?
Yeah, I bought this. I bought the 4K Steelbook. It looks great. I had to get it because that VHS tape was worn out by me when I was a kid. So it's a great upgrade, nice. Though. It's a really fun movie, and nostalgic glasses, I can't hate this movie whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, Small Soldiers is definitely a film where I think it was on TV a lot, like at Christmas when I was a kid, and I was like, yes, have to watch this.
Yeah.
It was always kind of like circled in my TV mag back in the day. Don't really see it on TV much at all anymore, but there we are. So, Caught Stealing then, Tommy, the new Darren Aronofsky movie. What do you make of this one?
I'm very curious to see how it pans out because, to my knowledge, Aronofsky has not made a comedy, and this feels like a comedy, at least what I've seen from the trailers. So, I'm very excited. Austin Butler is great. Zoe Kravitz is great. So, I'm sure it's going to be good, but it's just interesting to see him do a whole new tone for him and not a bleak, depressing movie like I feel like he usually does.
Yes. He's good at those, certainly with my choice when I hadn't bloody seen it before. Yeah, Caught Stealing looks really interesting. It seems quite conventional for Darren Aronofsky, to be honest. Like, it's like a crime comedy. You know, it definitely feels like Darren Aronofsky is maybe going for more of a safe bet here. I don't know. Maybe just bringing something out where he feels like he can bring great success at the box office and critically, more importantly, and then just maybe try and use that for something else that's can be more of his wheelhouse. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but you've got big stars in there as well that kind of backs up my point. You know, you've got Austin Butler, Bad Bunny, Zoe Kravitz as well. So, and Matt Smith with a giant Mohican. So yeah, it looks interesting from the trailers and things. I can't see much of like, you know, Darren Aronofsky's kind of style, if you know what I mean.
If you told me if he wasn't like in the marketing whatsoever and you told me he directed it, I'd be floored. Yeah. It doesn't seem like it. And he hasn't had a hit since it looks like probably Noah.
Yeah.
And that was like over a decade ago. So at this point, you know, Darren Aronofsky is not exactly the most commercial filmmaker. I feel like only a few of his movies have really broken through. So I wouldn't be shocked if this is him just being like, all right, let me be a little commercial. Let me get back into like the Noah Black Swan era where I was grossing like over 300 million at the box office.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he's got a big star now in Austin Butler, so maybe that will do well for him. Also, with like The Whale, like where the film that got Brendan Fraser his Oscar, that kind of felt like more of one of his more, character study movies like The Wrestler and Black Swan. Whereas again, this just doesn't feel like that either. It's not experimental and it's not like a character study. It feels like more of a straight up just crime comedy. Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see how this film pans out and how much of like Darren Aronofsky, how much of his influence we see on this film in the final product.
Yeah, is it going to be a surprise, depressing movie? Probably not.
Yeah, probably. With themes of death and obsession in there, squeeze it in there somehow. So should we go with my choice first then, Tommy, if that's all right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I think for me, my two choices were between this and The Fountain, because I know obviously what your pick was going to be, and a few of the others I had seen, but The Fountain kind of intrigued me. Looking at my research with like a lot of like the top 10 articles online, ranking Aronofsky movies, The Fountain wasn't really that high up on people's lists. I think the guy from Collider had put that as their number one and said that it's just stunning to look at and it's just so dreamlike and earnest. Hugh Jackman does a incredible performance, etc. Rachel Weisz is amazing. But then a lot of other articles were saying that it's either like you either absolutely love this film or you really hate it. It's kind of one of those. But it looked kind of really interesting, this film, where it goes through, a large timescape through the film. So, but I eventually went with Requiem for a Dream. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Jared Leto, it was more just kind of the reviews I was looking at. They were saying it was a really great movie in terms of the way it's shot and how kind of crazy it is. So, yeah, there wasn't too much in it, frankly. I just had a feeling that this was a film that I felt that was more important to see, or that it's more essential to see of Darren Aronofsky's work than The Fountain. So there wasn't really much in it. And I think it was one of the first films that really put him on the map as well.
Yeah, it definitely was his breakout. So, and on the Jared Leto thing, I mean, real quick with Jared Leto, I feel like he's best in roles where you just want him to get his shit rocked, or get the shit beat out of him, like this in Panic Room, and there's a couple others where he's just a guy you just want to punch in the face and you want to see him just get the shit beat out of him. I think this is definitely one of those roles. So when he plays a guy that you're supposed to like or find charming, it's like, no, what are you doing, Jared Leto? You're not that.
Yeah, you're not that. You're a junkie.
Yeah.
Right, so what happens in Requiem for a Dream? What doesn't happen in this film, frankly?
Yeah.
Well, going to IMDb, one sentence. The drug-induced utopias of 4 Coney Island people are shattered when their addictions run deep. So, of course, this is directed by Darren Aronofsky, co-written by him and Hubert Selby Jr., stars Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Ellen Burstyn of The Exorcist fame, of course. So initial reactions for you, Tommy, what did you make of this one?
So I thought this movie was amazing. I think that there was something that came up with it where this is a movie I always saw on Reddit boards back in the day, where it'd be what's one movie you can only watch once, or what's the most harrowing movie you ever seen? And most often than not, it was people saying Requiem for a Dream. So I think that for me, I had this built up in this head as being this the most disgusting film ever made, and oh my god, I can never watch it again. And I think because of how I built it up in my head, I didn't find it nearly as disturbing as I thought it was going to be. It still was, and it still was a little bleak and heartbreaking, especially that last shot of the movie. But I think that my head had it worse than it was in reality. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I didn't really hear much about what Requiem for a Dream was all about, but I knew it was very good and it made a huge impact when it came out. But yeah, this is a really dark movie
Yeah.
in that last like 20 minutes. Fucking hell. It's if you're squeamish, especially about needles, don't watch this film.
Yeah, if you're like not good about like anything like heartbreaking or drug related, just don't watch this.
Yeah, it's really hard hitting, and I must admit I did get quite emotional at the end. I wasn't tearing up or anything, but yeah, it's really sad at the end. It's a real kind of hit you in the heart type movie, even though they're not necessarily like massively likable characters. They don't have a lot of like redeeming features where you're like, yeah, you really want them to succeed. But I think it's just the fact that there's nothing there to really like attach yourself to with these characters to be like, yeah, there's a way out for these guys. You just feel like, the start of the descent into darkness starts like really early on in the movie, and it just gets darker and darker, and frankly quite difficult to watch in that last 10 minutes.
I think in terms of characters, outside of Ellen Bernstein, you're correct that I don't care about any of these characters. I'm like whatever, like they suck, they're shitty people, whatever. But Ellen Bernstein's the one character where it's just like she was like essentially a sweet old lonely woman that like just wanted to be on TV, and she was really excited for that, and then she just didn't realize what she was getting herself into, and that was where the main heartbreak of this movie came for me. Because for Jared Leto, it's like, well, he's Jared Leto. You see Jared Leto in the beginning of this movie stealing his mom's TV. It's like, all right, this guy's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
No wonder Jared Leto was cast. But like the other, when you get to Ellen Burstyn, it's like, she did nothing wrong. She wasn't like a junkie or anything like that. She was just a normal old woman in like, the Queens or Brooklyn, I think it was.
Yeah, really heartbreaking. So directing then. So interesting you talk about the whole TV stealing thing. That's the one scene I really didn't like that much, if I'm honest, is the opening scene, like before the title credits with the split screen stuff. And it's quite egregious. There's quite egregious use of it here too, like where Jared Leto is trying to unchain this TV set off the wall, and the other shot is on this other woman like locked in the cupboard doing nothing. And I just felt this like it's just showing no value shooting it like this, as the woman in the cupboard is offering like nothing, as we can barely see her face with these giant glasses, and it's quite dark in there too. Plus, it just restricts the view of what Jared Leto is doing on screen too. So, not a good start for me. Yeah. And about 15 minutes later, with like Jared Leto and Jennifer Connelly's character Marion, the split screen happens again. But they're lying right next to each other. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Why can't you just have them in the same shot? Yes, you have kind of, one side showing the other one, like touching each other's skin. But just to do that, you could just do that in like a cutaway shot. So it just didn't really work at all for me. Like the split screen stuff in the beginning, that was a bit frustrating.
In terms of editing, though, I think that the editing direction was really good in this movie. We're like keep on cutting to like all of a sudden them taking a hit of something over and over again. I was thinking a little bit of like almost Edgar-itis, where like in terms of like the quick editing one to one in this movie, especially like when they all of a sudden like rapid cut to them like hitting, I don't know, like some weed or like taking some heroin or something like that. So that and aspect was really good, and especially making you like phrased out.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's interesting though with all that, the kind of the montage of them taking drugs and stuff, is that there's kind of sort of the tone shifts a little bit sometimes. It like in the beginning, it's kind of more recreational. It has a recreational feel, more of a fun feel about it, sort of like Train Spotting. But then as the film goes on, it just gets kind of darker, even though you're kind of seeing a lot of the same shots. But in like Edgar Wright, like when you have all these fast cuts, it's very specific to like moving on time in the story. And it's certainly a lot more of a fun tone. But with here, there's so many montages and fast cutting sequences, and it's mainly of them like taking drugs. And what's interesting is that the drug taking sequences use a lot of the same shots, but the music and sound effects are always like very different, creating a slightly different tone, as I said, as you watch the film, to almost sort of disorient you at times. Also, the tones of these montages gets darker as the characters descend into darker places themselves. And what's interesting with the imagery with the drug taking is that you never see them actually take the drugs, I don't think. Until, like, Leto is in a really bad place as he's going to Miami with Tyrone, I think it is. And you see his arm look really black and manky where he's been injecting. And then after the montage, you see him injecting the needle in his arm, and it's absolutely disgusting to watch. And if you don't like needles, look away. You know, I mean, I don't mind needles that much. I mean, I literally had a blood test the other day and it was fine. But even for me, that was a tough watch.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little insane. So in terms of directing too, I just love like the scenes of just Ellen Bernstein in her apartment alone, especially once she gets more and more into like the methamphetamines, and she's just like so disoriented, and it's like really tight close-up shots on her, and just like seeing her like point of view and stuff like that makes you really disoriented and really within her headspace. I thought that was just a brilliant choice right there.
Yeah, definitely, especially like the floating cupcakes in space. Yeah. That was kind of cool. What's really interesting as well is the use of how time passes in this film. There's a scene where Ellen Burstyn, who plays the mother of Harry, Jared Leto's character, where like her breakfast was it eggs, grapefruit, and coffee. Like they've immediately been eaten in the same shot, like a really quick time lapse shot. And there's other occasions where like Jared Leto and Jennifer Connelly are taking drugs in this really snapping rhythm, as we've said. You know, then they have like a party in their flat with loads of people coming and going in a more traditional like time lapse shot. You know, that happens with Ellen Burstyn's character too, Sarah Goldfarb, when she's cleaning her flat and watching TV, all done with very like quick time lapses. So I feel like Darren Aronofsky is definitely playing with the idea of how these characters are experiencing time moving in a way. Not in terms of like sort of a Christopher Nolan way, where he's overtly being very sort of clever about it and very important to the plot. But here it's like you feel like a lot, even though this is quite a short film, you feel like a lot of time is being passed in this movie in a very short space of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it takes over the span of like months or maybe even like a year.
Yeah.
But in general, just like the different like time frame and stuff like that. Like you said, the party sequence was a standout for me in terms of time lapse stuff, where you just see everyone just quickly going in and out and stuff like that. And then there's some stuff where like towards the end of the movie, once it gets really bleak, and you know Jennifer Connelly's character has this whole thing about how she wants to open up her own clothing shop, and you see at the end of the movie when after she did her terrible like ass to ass like after she did that, she's on her couch and she's just curled up with like her bag of like heroin, and you see crumpled drawings all along her floor, just being like she just gave up on her dream and she's very critically missed. And it's just way that it's like almost like a wide shot in a way, just really takes home how like she's lost and she's never going to get to her dream, and she doesn't even care about it anymore. She just cares about this bag of drugs she has in her hand. Yeah,
that kind of almost creepy smile she has on the sofa just staring at all that money is quite unsettling as well. I would say. Yeah, great performance from her. But again, there's so much creativity with Darren Aronofsky. I just feel like every scene he goes into with the character of Sarah Goldfarb, he's always just trying to up himself and trying to do something completely different. Almost sort of like in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, almost. Like, I love how like her character's direction develops when things start to turn for the worse. There's like a really great scene in a doctor's surgery that I've never seen done before, where it's just like this one static shot, but it's in a fisheye lens, making her look really big in the foreground. And this doctor arrives looking quite small in sort of the mid to background. But that's not the weird thing. The weird thing is that Sarah is like talking and moving really slowly, and the doctor is moving really fast, and in this kind of time-lapse thing again. This literally could be time-lapse the movie. But it's also talking like really fast in a high-pitched voice. So it's so strange to watch, yet just feels like almost like a taster to things to come, to get weirder. then later with her like scenes in what feels like she's at war with her own fridge. It's like a monster movie, and the monster is the fridge. And she's trying to battle her diet. Sarah walks around her flat in this kind of closed fixed tracking shot at like low angles, front on and at the back of her head, and the lighting is kind of flickering all over the place, and then all of a sudden the fridge jumps out of her like a jump scare. It definitely got me, because you're not expecting a fucking fridge to jump out at you.
It was amazing. The whole sequence with like Christopher McDonald, Shooter McGavin himself, just like dancing around, stuff like that. Like you said, very much like Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing, where like Dream Warriors, where like all of a sudden they're on the TV set or something.
No giant pink penises, though.
No, not this time.
The fridge was an appropriate color of white.
Yeah. So in terms of the doctor scene, whenever the doctor's like within this movie, the doctor that Ellen Burstyn sees, I think in terms of blocking, it's really clever, and just like how, if you notice it within those scenes, the doctor comes in, he never once looks up at her. He just is staring down. He's like, here, take this. You're good. But he also, like, whenever he goes into the room, he's always right at the door. He doesn't walk in. He doesn't really get himself situated whatsoever. She's on the corner, kind of like scared or something like that, or just whatever. But this guy, you can tell that he's just a pill pusher. He doesn't give a shit about this person. He doesn't care. It's like, oh, you want methamphetamine? Here you go. There. That's it.
Yeah. It's just really sad.
Yeah.
And kind of just makes me angry as well, a little bit.
On a more brighter note,
a brighter note in this movie? Okay.
Yeah, brighter note in this movie. I think that in the beginning of the movie, when like you see Ellen Burstyn out there with her friends like Louise Lasseter and the actress who plays Ray and stuff like that, all like the rows of old ladies, it did make me think almost of like a New York City kind of like Leon the Professional, where it's like hot summer days and stuff like that in terms of cinematography and stuff like that. I was thinking about that a lot, and how like in the beginning of this movie, like she says that she's alone and stuff like that, but she has all these friends, and it seems like, oh, she at least has a community right there. And then, you get that in the beginning, and then all of a sudden just get taken away, which makes it a little more devastating that like you don't see her with her friends whatsoever once she gets more and more into her psychosis.
It's almost she just kind of takes her friends as advantage kind of thing, where she never once really talks about her weight really with, when she's on the street in the sun with her friends. There aren't many of those scenes. She's very much I guess she's very much resigned to just trusting this TV program that a call will come and that these pills will work. There's no real discussion or debate with her friends. It's just, there's no real thought process there. If people are telling me to do this, then and take these pills, then I will if it works.
Yeah, I think she briefly mentioned. Yeah. She briefly mentions like how much weight she lost, but also I just love the one
she
scene.
Thinks it's a success at the start, and never really questions anything, because obviously it's going well. So why would you? I guess.
I also love the one scene where Jared Leto realizes that his mom's on drugs. He's like, Mom, are you taking like uppers or whatever? And how, if I remember correctly, like there's so many close-up shots of her, just like her teeth chattering. And just a real great moment of like, oh God, like she is clearly tweaking her mind out right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great use of sound in that as well. Probably would have liked a little bit more of that, even though it probably would have been quite horrible to listen to, like teeth grinding. But certainly, like I feel like as Darren Aronofsky goes through his career, like in the next film we'll talk about, the sound design is really on point. Whereas I think this is probably more of a visual thing. A visual film that he's concentrating on, even though I think the sound here is more important with the score and how that mixes with the score. It's a really quite experimental score with very classical music that we all kind of know. I'm not really sure what the music is, but it definitely feels very familiar. I feel like I've heard it a lot on other TV programs and sports stuff as well, but kind of mixing that with more of a digital sound, if you will, was quite interesting and very kind of common in the early noughties, I think, as well. And I think Darren Aronofsky does a great job here in terms of the score and how he mixes the sound effects.
Definitely. I think there's like a certain sense of like glossiness of the cinematography too that reminded me a little bit of 28 Days Later. This is, looks better than that, but kind of similar. I don't know if this was shot on film or digital, but I got almost like a little bit of a digital sense towards it, with like how, especially in some of the later scenes.
Yeah, definitely. Favorite shot for me is, or favorite scene is definitely that scene where Sarah is watching TV and the game show she loves watching, and all of a sudden she's imagining herself on the show looking at all slim and beautiful. Then she digitally like materializes in her room, in her living room. Then the host on the TV show notices this and then himself digitally materializes as well, and they start mocking her and laughing, and then the walls in the room like open up and the crew of the show come in the room and they all start doing her makeup and the cameras are all in her face and the game show set is like all around her as she sat in her armchair. Then everyone starts like dancing around her. Then of course the fridge wants some fun and slowly approaches and opens up like the thing in the thing and tries to eat Sarah. Fantastically creative of someone going crazy with hunger and loneliness. It's just a great mix of kind of the weird and the scary and the down and the strange, frankly.
Yeah.
Really
I do also love in the end of that, the whole sequence where like, the whole fridge attacking and stuff like that. It cuts immediately to her in her room, lights completely off, and her just staring at the TV, and it's completely off. Just a real like hard sense where like, oh, she's lost her mind completely.
Yeah. What's your favorite scene or shot for you, Tommy?
So it's weird saying this is my favorite scene or shot because it's a very depressing scene, but I think that the end of the movie where Sarah imagines herself as like the game show winner, and all of a sudden Jared Leto comes out and he looks like like what every mom wants her son to be, like, properly dressed, looking like really dapper and stuff like that, and it just really cuts into them, and then just like how glossy it looks and how dreamlike it looks too, and how heartbreaking it is, because like you've seen the rest of the movie, you realize this is all fantasy, this is never going to be what their life is, and it's just like, oh, this is what could have been if like things worked out for the best. But yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely the moment where I was getting a little emotional. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. I started tearing up a little.
Yeah, it's a really great moment. That directing score for you, Tommy, what are you going for?
So out of 10, right? So
yeah,
I'm gonna go like a 9.2. I'd say that like Darren Aronofsky has some really great shots in this movie. I think that he really gets you within the headspace of characters once they're in their drug psychosis, and even like, the insane scenes of like seeing Marlon Wayans in a limo with the drug dealer who gets shot right there, and how it's strictly from Marlon Wayans' point of view, and how it's like, what the hell is going on? It's so disoriented. You don't know what's going on. Even the scenes we touched upon a lot, like, when Christopher McDonald comes into Ellen Bernstein's living room, or even just the opening shots of like Ellen Bernstein when she really see her just getting into her psychosis, her teeth chattering and everything. I think that he did an excellent job in showing how bleak this world can be.
Yeah, it's wonderfully creative, and it's just really quite shocking of how dark with the imagery Darren Aronofsky can go to at the end of this film, and just the sort of the confidence in how many kind of montages and quick cutting that he's put into this film is quite extraordinary, and the fact that everyone kind of feels fresh still as you keep watching the movie. Yeah, some of the imagery I think sometimes doesn't work and maybe looks a tad dated with the visual effects, but that's only a really small detail for a gripe there. But overall, I think Darren Aronofsky does an amazing job. I always love it when like filmmakers really just try and push the boat out with what they can do with a camera, and I always respect that. Obviously not everything completely works, I don't think, and maybe there's times where he could have maybe toned it down, and you're just thinking of just like, what purpose is this serving? Could it have been a bit more, conventional, maybe, and have more of a, maybe let the actor express how kind of crazy they're feeling. But for the most part, like, I think Aronofsky does an incredible job. So yeah, I'll probably go like a solid, a solid 9, I think, for me. Right, screenplay then. I think with this film, there's two main storylines going on here. Even though there's 4 characters, I think we really only focus entirely on 2, where we follow like Harry Goldberg, played by Jared Leto, and his friend Tyrone and his girlfriend Jennifer Connelly, Marion, they're all like on the up and up and have ambitions to do something big in their lives. Like Harry and Tyrone want to hit the big time as drug dealers, plus Harry wants to help Marion open this new clothing shop. They keep saying like big money is going to arrive soon, but from very early on you get a sense that all this is going to end. This is not going to end well for these characters. Then the other more heartbreaking story for me is with Harry's mother, Sarah, played by obviously Ellen Burstyn, who gets a phone call and says she's won a prize to go on her favorite game show on TV, but she can't fit into her favorite red dress. So she eventually takes these new diet pills. Well, at first she tries to like go on a diet, which doesn't really work. The fridge isn't happy. So she goes on these new diet pills and she starts losing her mind, like seeing things in her bedroom, etc. For me, I always felt that she might be able to come through it for me, or at least because of how innocent she is in this situation. I was always at least hoping she might get better because of how incredible her performance is. But what's interesting about each storyline is they both sort of reach the height of their happiness quite early on in the film. There's no real clear point when that happens, but then the rest of the film is their descent into darkness, frankly. Then all the characters have this big, like, dark montage scene cut together really fast of like Harry getting his arm cut off eventually. Yeah. Tyrone ends up in jail, which frankly he's been let off with just going in jail, and Sarah gets treated abysmally in hospital and ends up receiving ECT therapy, where she has these electrical nodes on her head and basically being electrocuted and basically becomes a zombie, like with Jack Nicholson in spoilers in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, being lobotomized in that. Yeah, so it's truly heartbreaking with that character especially. And then, as we kind of touched on as well, Jennifer Connelly ends up being in a really dark, like, prostitution situation, but ends up with shitloads of money and, just throwing away her own dream. So the film becomes very affecting emotionally, and how, like, you can't escape the choices you make in this world of greedy capitalism, I guess. Yeah, it's so for me, like, it's just really interesting structurally, where the crest of the wave of the highs that they experience is very early on in the film. And then for a good hour, it's just their descent into darkness and losing their minds, basically. Yeah, it's quite a bold choice to structure your film that way, I think. That there is no feeling of redemption for any of these characters.
Yeah, once it gets dark, and there's no real light moments from there on in. And even I like how the script like continuously just like cuts between each character simultaneously, kind of like almost like the split screen you're talking about the directing earlier, but how especially towards the end where we just see everyone like all in the same position, where the script goes from like Tyrone just in the prison cell, curled up in a fetal position, thinking about his mom and like wanting to be held by his mom, which was also a very heartbreaking moment. So then the script goes from there to Marion with like holding her like bag of money and all the crumpled things, and then Sarah just being a zombie, and then Jared Leto not having an arm whatsoever. I think it's really clever in there, and I like how there's like almost like the increasing like thing in the background of Kristen McDonald's Tabby T-Bone show. Right there, especially with in terms of Sarah's story, and like how you don't really know what the TV show is. It's not clear if it's a game show or if it's like an inspirational talk show. What was really funny with the movie was I rented the Blu-ray here, and the Blu-ray menu is just Tabby T-Bone's Kristen McDonald's TV show. It's as like an infomercial,
right?
So it also created an air mystique of like, what is this show? And for me, I'm wondering also in terms of the script of like, are we supposed to believe that this call ever actually happened to Sarah, or did she just imagine this in her head?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, was there even a voice at the end of the phone? That's a really good point. I never really noticed that. Like, what is this TV show? For me, it felt like some sort of game show, but obviously you don't really see enough of it to actually know what they're actually playing. The whole infomercial stuff is that with the diet is that there's three, because I don't think they ever reveal what there's three things, isn't there? There's one, no sugar and no red meat, but I don't think you ever learn what the third one is, do you?
I don't think you do.
No.
Which adds to it, because it seems weird. Like, why would a game show have the host talking about how I don't eat red meat whatsoever? Like, what's going on? Like, you'll feel so much better after it. It's like, so is the game show like you don't eat red meat? Like, you don't see
or sugar.
You don't see like Wheel of Fortune. You don't see like Pat Sajak like spinning the wheel or anything. So
it's like, does unlucky. You got to eat a hot dog now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, you land on that space. That means you got to eat red meat.
Yeah.
So this was based on a book, though, written by Hubert Shelby Jr., and he did write the screenplay too. So I think it's safe to say it's probably very accurate to the book. I know my girlfriend read the book and she said it was very bleak. So I was like, okay, that tracks with this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive reader, but I have, I'd seen like American Psycho quite a few times, and then I had read the book, and then I was like, fuck, the film is nothing compared to the book. I was like, I don't want to read that ever again. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see whether I actually read this and see if it goes very, darker in tone or whatever in the book compared to the film.
Because you could definitely get away with a lot more on page than you can in visual media. Because this movie was originally released like NC-17, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And so for in America, NC-17 is no one under the age of 17 can see this movie, even if you bring like your kid with you and you're like over 18. So
that's not the highest rated restriction, is it? No,
it is in America. That's the highest rating. If it's NC-17, literally you can't bring in like I went in with like my like niece or something like that, they'd be like, no, sorry, you can't bring that kid in. So it's above an R. So the fact that is that this movie alone was already pushing the limit of what it could, and there's an R-rated version on home video where like they edited the sex scene and stuff like that. But even still. This movie is bleak, and I feel like you have to be kind of unflinching in the screenplay to show how, this can't be a PSA for, hey, maybe heroin's a good time. You have to show the horrors of it.
Yeah. Go watch Trainspotting.
Yeah.
What's really interesting with this script as well, like, even though there's no like feeling of redemption or hope within this film, they kind of try and sort of sneak it in there anyway with the kind of the character's mentality, with the way some of the scenes kind of play out. Like there's a few occasions with Jared Leto's character where certain things happen, but then the scene repeats and something else happens, or rather not a lot happens. And it's like you're watching what he wants to do in that moment, but can't bring himself to do it. And then the repeat of this, see himself to do it in that scene, if you know what I mean. There's one where Leto and his friend Tyrone, they go and sit next to this cop at a coffee place, and Leto steals the cop's gun and they lose it. Then they kind of toss it between each other. Then it kind of cuts back to the start of the scene again, and they just leave the cop alone, walk away. And then there's another scene where Leto leaves his mother in a cab after visiting her, and it's just like breaks down in tears. Then there's a little like drug montage scene, but then he looks fine in the cab again. Plus, like Jennifer Connelly's character Marion gets one too, probably the best one, where she's like talking to this shrink at a restaurant, and he can't stop eating and wants to ask a favor, and he puts his hand on hers. And then Marion like stabs him with a fork, shouting, "You smug fuck!" And then it just cuts to his reaction, like asking, "So what's the question?" Like nothing happened. So there's definitely a mix of realities going on here, and what these characters wish they could do in that moment, but they don't feel like they can.
It does add to a little bit of an audience like heartbreak right there, especially with the Jennifer Connelly scene, because that therapist always seems like such a scumbag, and then you're thinking like, oh, like this is a moment of catharsis, like, oh, finally she's doing something, like she's like getting out of the cycle, but instead cuts back to reality, and no, that's just like what she wishes could happen. The life is a little more bleak than this. You're not going to have the happy ending right here.
Yeah. I really wanted that scene to be real.
Yeah, same. Because like, oh, Jeffrey Colley, please just don't do what you're about to do.
Yeah. Favorite lines, funny lines, like near the beginning. We got a winner from that TV show.
Yeah, I have to look up lines real quick to remember. But
yeah, sure.
most of it is a little bit not that great.
There's a good one near the beginning when Leto like brings the TV set to this dealer, I think, and he says, "Your mother needs you like a moose needs a hat rack." Which I thought was really bizarre but hilarious.
I did like when Ellen Burstyn gets her hair dyed and she thinks it's supposed to be like red or something like that. And she's looking at her hair in the mirror and she's like, if this is a red, I want to know what's orange. Because she looks like Gladys from Weapons in that moment.
Yeah. Now when I get the sun, I smile, which is quite a poignant one, a sad one from Sarah Ellen Bernstein. Feed me, Sarah. Feed me, Sarah. I think from the fridge. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's definitely from the fridge. I like Sarah when she's tweaking out and like when Jared Leto goes to see her and he's like, "How come you know more than a doctor?" Believe me, Ma, I know.
Yeah, but I think my favorite is the one I literally just mentioned with Jennifer Connelly. You smug fuck.
Yeah,
kind of highly satisfying in the moment, but just kind of frustrating that it wasn't real.
Yeah,
as well. Screenplay score then, Tommy. What are you going for?
I'm going towards like a 8.8 right here. I think this is really solid screenplay. I think that overall the way it like juggles between the different characters, that you don't feel exhausted by any of the characters, and it hits the crescendos of like, you know, the parallel moments of like how everyone's going through the psychosis at once, and how even little moments in the screenplay, how you know, at the end of the movie when you see Sarah Goldfrapp, her friends come in to see her from the hospital. And she's in that catatonic state. She's a zombie. She like can't think of anything. And it just cuts to her friends just like crying on the bench, comfort each other because they realize like, oh my God, like we might be responsible for this. So, yeah, it's great that they add a little bit of levity here and there. And even towards the movie, once it gets bleak, like there's a brief moment where you think that everything's going to work out for Marlon Wayans and Jared Leto when they go down to Miami. And then Jared Leto has to put the needle in his like infected arm. It's like, dude, like, what are you thinking?
Use the other arm.
Use the other arm. Even Marlon Wayne's like, dude, like, you sure you want to hit up in that arm?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, similar ballpark in the 8s. I think it's a really kind of risky kind of structure that Darren Aronofsky goes with here, because as I said, like the highs of these characters come very early on in this film, and then it's just a slow descent into darkness. And for some people, probably for a lot of people, they're like, nah, I'm not watching the rest of this.
Yeah.
So it's quite a balancing act and quite a risk to go down this kind of downward spiral with these characters and keep people engaged. And I think because there is not a lot of hope for these characters at all. So to actually get to the end of this and keep your audience engaged with the creativity that he's going for is quite an achievement, you know, in the writing of these characters as well. So, and there's just a tiny element of hope, I think, that the film lures you into, that there might, with, you know, the way kind of some of these scenes are structured in what you think they want to do, what they want to do in that moment, but in reality it's not happening. It kind of, you know, lures you in with that kind of those scenes. So it keeps you wanting to carry on with it. So it's definitely a really interesting balancing act Aronofsky goes with the structure of this. So yeah, I think it's, but saying that, there's, you know, it definitely is sort of a character study of certainly those two characters in particular, Sarah and Tommy Goldfarb. Keep saying Goldberg. Goldfarb. Again, as I said, there's a tiny element of hope, but again, there's not a lot of like redeeming features about these characters. So again, that's risky, and yet I made it to the end. So I'll probably go like an 8.6.
It's a testament to the characters' performances too in the script, that like you still somewhat care about the characters, even though they are for the most part all like pieces of shit. That you're still like hoping that they can make it out.
So acting then, I think for me, the standout for sure is Ellen Burstyn. She is fantastic in this film. She has like a great monologue about halfway through the film, like talking to her son, Harry, Jared Leto, and how her life is great now. You know, that she's on these diet pills and lost 25 pounds and she's not going to be on TV soon, but doesn't know when. The phone call is imminent. And she's very happy and excited about it. But like Harry is very skeptical about it though. But Ellen Bernstein carries on her monologue, not letting his opinion get her down. But eventually her feelings about her loneliness and her old age kind of take over in her performance. You know, and she's kind of got this excited smile and it's combined with tears in her eyes towards the end. And it's like she's really battling these two emotions of, as she's finishing her monologue, you know, she's trying to be optimistic for the future. You know, things are positive right now. You know, she's losing weight. She's waiting for the phone call to be on TV, waiting and waiting, but also realizing her own reality with her own loneliness and her old age. You know, it's an incredible performance for me.
Mm-hmm. It almost feels like a dual performance because of all the characters, she's the one that you see go through the most change, where in the beginning of the movie, she's more of like a sweet old woman and everything. And you see her go through it. And like, she's like, oh, like, you know, like a typical like grandma or mom in like their elderly years and stuff like that. And then once you see her go more and more into the madness, I think a standout moment was when she goes into the casting office for the TV show. And she goes in there and she looks like a crazy tweaker, like an insane person right there. Like something out of a horror movie where like you can tell just based on the reactions to everyone that they're like, what is happening? We need to call security right now and kick this person out. But it's so heartbreaking because of what you remember of what she looked like I don't know, like 40 minutes before in the movie. And the time frame was probably like maybe 5 or 6 months or something like that in the span of the movie itself. But it's just really heartbreaking and just like really see her just go through like so many different changes. It's a little insane to me that she didn't win the Oscar for this. She was nominated, but she lost to Julia Roberts and Aaron Brockovich.
It's a tough decision there.
Yeah. So I think that Julia
I would have given it to Ellen Bernstein for sure, I think. But I mean, I haven't seen Aaron Brockovich for a while, but after watching her in this, especially like that last shot of her in the hospital with her hair cut off and has gone through tons of ECT therapy, she looks absolutely haunting. And I said earlier, like, it definitely reminded me of kind of that last shot of Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I know, a bit different situation, but still that sort of similar vibe of shock and a zombie-like figure. But it felt more hard-hitting here for me. For sure.
And seeing like the life taken out of her eyes of someone who was so lively in the beginning of this movie and just like living it up with her friends and on the sidewalk or wherever.
I think Jared Leto is fine. He's all right.
Nothing really much to say about him. I think that he plays the role well. I do like. I think the stand up for him was the scene with his mom where he's just like, Mom, you don't want to be doing this. Like, you sure you're doing this or anything like that? It was just like the horror of realizing, like, oh, my mom might be going down a dark path right now.
Apparently, he lost an awful lot of weight for this role, so he certainly was very dedicated to it. So I'll give him props for that.
I do want to mention a brief performance we haven't touched upon yet. This movie is stock full of like great like one scene performances from character actors. Like, for example, Christopher McDonald, Mark Margolis, Gus himself. From Breaking Bad. And the one I really want to touch upon is Keith David as Big Tim. I think that's always great in a movie to have a surprise Keith David. Like, I didn't know he was going to be in this. And he popped up. I was like, oh shit, it's Keith David. Fuck yeah, let's go. But
he's having a good time.
In terms of like screenplay, in terms of directing, in terms of his performance too, that really when Jennifer Connelly steps in his apartment, it feels like she's meeting Satan himself and she's descending into hell. And I think that he gives such a great performance as just an evil person where like, his smile and stuff like that, where like he takes once he takes out his dick and he's like, well, I didn't take it here to show you it or whatever. It's just like, oh God, this is just like the scummiest of scummiest guys. I think that he's just great when he tells her like the one part where he tells Jennifer Connelly, like, trust me, after you try my stuff, you want to come back. And it's just like, oh God, no, Jennifer Connelly, what are you getting yourself into? Yeah.
Yeah.
So great like heat check performance for him.
Yeah, he kind of does that sort of. It's a fine line with Keith David because he's a very cool character. He's a cool customer, but he can definitely turn it. He doesn't have to do too much to just turn it to be creepy.
There's that GIF I always see, or reel I always see him on Instagram, where like it's Keith David in some random movie where he turns to the person in the car and he says like, "Welcome to hell, motherfucker," and that's literally like what he was in this movie. That's exactly his character. Might as well have just said that.
Definitely. Jennifer Connelly, I think, is very good and for sure fantastic towards the end when she, has her own kind of descent into madness. And it's interesting with certainly those last few scenes with her, with those sex scenes. And it's just like she does kind of this incredible job where she has this look on her face where she's just like not immediately present, that she's somewhere else. And she's just numb to everything at this point. You don't really get that from any of the other characters like Leto. You feel like he is feeling it with the drugs, but with Connolly, it's just her personality is sort of coming in and out with this character, with what horrors she's going through. If you know what I mean, it's a really incredible performance from her, very vulnerable performance from her as well.
She plays detached really well in this movie, where like she's just totally just in and out of it, especially in the beginning of the movie when you first see her, and the scene of like her and Jared Leto sneaking up onto the rooftop, and how like she just seems like really fun and full of energy and full of life, and just like really like just like a ball of fun and stuff like that, and like really mischievous and stuff like that, and has all this hope and dreams to her. And then in the movie where you see her where she's just like descended into just chaos, and just like she doesn't care about anything except for the fact she made money, and she has some great drugs from Keith David.
Favorite performance for you? Who are you going for?
I'd have to go with Ellen Burstyn. Keith David's a close second for him, even though it's kind of one note. Ellen Burstyn, I think like she should have gotten the Oscar right here. It's a great performance, great descendants into madness, and just like how you see the effects of the drugs with character with her, especially in scenes like we were talking about earlier, the scenes with the doctor where she's just like tweaking, like going crazy, and like everyone's trying to assure her, oh, nothing's wrong, nothing's going bad, like you're okay, but you could tell like something's wrong with this woman. And even her seeing Jared Leto when she first started getting on the uppers, and she's just tweaking a little bit, and you can see something's a little bit off of her, even though she seems a little more full of life, but it's clearly like cocaine kind of like energy in a way, where it's just very quirky and just like way too rapid fire, like speaking and stuff like that.
I think for me, I'm going to go for Ellen Burstyn as well. Yeah, she's just quite extraordinary, starting off as this quite innocent woman. Certainly the one character that is fairly likable, and then just her descent into madness is just quite incredible. Certainly in quite a realistic way, even though everything that is going on around her is not normal at all, yet she really has this kind of grounded quality that really attaches yourself to just watching this performance. And it's just incredibly sad watching her at the end. And I agree, I think she certainly should have won the Oscar. I second that. Acting score for you, Tommy? What are you going with?
I'm gonna go with like a 9.3. I think that there's no weak link in this cast. Even Marlon Wayne too. I haven't really seen him in a dramatic role before, and because he's usually the guy in like scary movie and stuff like that, and like fun, dumb, broad comedies. So to see him in this role, he was great, and he was like spellbound. Even the end of the moment where in the movie, where like you can tell that all he really wants is just like any sort of love whatsoever, but he's like deprived of that, and he's just thinking of his mom and just curled in that fetal position, just heartbreaking. But between him, Ellen Burstyn, Jared Leto being Jared Leto, that's why it's not a 10. But Jennifer Connelly even is great, and just so many great little heat checks by character actors. Even like Dylan Baker as the doctor, seeing like the drugs right there and being like, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
So overall, fantastic performance. I think is the highlight of this movie.
Yeah, I was going to go below a 9, but I think you've changed my mind a little bit, and I think I'll go like a solid 9 as well. I think the direction definitely matches the performances for me. But yeah, I think if Jared Leto was better, then I would go a little bit higher. So yeah, straight 9 for me for Requiem for a Dream for acting. Right, let's add up the scores then for Requiem for a Dream. Drum roll, please. No. Requiem for a Dream gets a very impressive 53.9. That's pretty good. Where does that go on the old leaderboard? At the moment, it goes third, ahead of From Russia with Love and below Goldfinger. So in between our James Bond episode. Cool. That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episode. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off. Thank you.